Marcus Chen stood at the viewport of the transport ship, watching as Proxima Station's crystalline spires caught the light of its twin suns. After 6 months of intensive preparation and a 3-week journey through hyperspace, he was finally about to become the first human exchange student at Galactic University Proxima. His heart raced with equal parts excitement and anxiety. Approaching final docking sequence, announced the ship's AI in its perfectly modulated voice. All passengers please secure personal belongings. Marcus double-checked his well-worn backpack, making sure his tablet and credentials were easily accessible. The scholarship committee had taken a huge chance on him, a working-class kid from New Seattle who'd scored off the charts on xenolinguistics and adaptive reasoning. He couldn't afford to mess this up. The docking clamps engaged with a gentle shudder, and Marcus joined the line of various alien species heading for the exit. He couldn't help but notice he was the only human aboard. The Zrilix passenger in front of him kept shooting curious glances his way with all 4 of their eyes. "First time on Proxima?" the Zrilix asked, their translator rendering their clicks and whistles into smooth standard. "That obvious, huh?" Marcus grinned, adjusting his pack. "I'm starting at the university." "Ah, a student. How wonderful. I'm Professor Kix, Department of Comparative Biology. Perhaps we'll see each other around campus." Before Marcus could respond, they emerged into the station's vast arrival hall. The space was a riot of color and sound, with beings of all shapes and sizes hurrying about their business. Holographic signs in dozens of languages floated overhead, directing travelers to various destinations. Marcus made his way to the education sector checkpoint, where a stern-looking Nephilim official waited. The Nephilim were one of the oldest spacefaring races, known for their tall, graceful forms and strictly hierarchical society. "Purpose of visit?" the official asked, examining Marcus's credentials with their luminous silver eyes. "Exchange student. Galactic University Proxima. Xenolinguistics program." The official's eyes narrowed slightly. "Human. We don't get many of your kind in advanced studies." Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his stomach tightened. "First one in the exchange program. Actually, looking forward to changing that perception." Something that might have been amusement flickered across the official's features. They stamped his credentials and waved him through. "Good luck, human. You're going to need it." The university shuttle was waiting outside the station, piloted by a cheerful Meridian whose bioluminescent patterns shifted through rainbow hues as they chatted. Marcus learned that most of the other new students had arrived the previous week. He was late due to the limited availability of Earth Proxima transport. "Don't worry, though," the pilot assured him, their patterns pulsing encouragingly. "Orientation activities are still ongoing. You haven't missed much." The shuttle wound its way through the station's teaching district, finally settling onto a landing pad near a soaring structure of crystal and living metal, Marcus's new home for the next year. Galactic University Proxima's College of Xenolinguistics and Cultural Studies. A small welcoming committee waited on the pad. 2 Nephilim administrators, and what appeared to be an older student. As Marcus approached, he noticed the student was actually a mature Nephilim woman, her silver hair styled in elaborate braids that marked her as a returning learner. "Welcome to GUP," one administrator said. "I am Dean Veeler, and this is Professor Marin. We've arranged for Tilara here to show you to your quarters and help you get oriented." Tilara stepped forward, offering a graceful greeting gesture. "Welcome, Marcus Chen. I hope you'll find our community enlightening." There was something in her voice, a warmth that contrasted with the administrator's formal tones. Marcus returned the gesture, careful to match the exact angle of respect appropriate for a senior student. "Thank you for the welcome. I'm looking forward to learning from everyone here." Tilara's silver eyes widened slightly at his perfect execution of Nephilim etiquette. The dean made a small sound of approval. "Perhaps you'll do better than expected, human," Veeler said. "Tilara will show you the way. Classes begin tomorrow. Don't be late." As the administrators departed, Tilara gestured for Marcus to follow her into the building. That was impressive, she said. Most newcomers don't master our greeting customs so quickly. Marcus shrugged, falling into step beside her. I did a lot of studying before coming here. Figured it was better to show respect than accidentally cause offense. Wise choice. Though I should warn you, not everyone here will be as appreciative of a human showing such aptitude, because they don't think humans belong in advanced studies. Tilara's expression softened. Some cling to old prejudices. Humans are seen as young, impulsive, too emotional. But others of us. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We see potential in your species' adaptability, your creativity, your willingness to challenge established ways of thinking. They reached a lift, and Tilara pressed her palm to the control panel. As they ascended, she continued, I myself returned to studies late in life, after raising a child. Many questioned that choice. Perhaps that's why I'm more open to unconventional students. Marcus studied her profile, noting the subtle signs of age and experience that made her beautiful in a very different way from younger Nephilim. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself. The lift doors opened onto a residential level, and Tilara led him down a corridor lined with private rooms. This will be your quarters, she said, stopping at one door. The environmental controls are already set for human comfort. If you need anything, my room is just down the hall. I serve as residential advisor for this section. She showed him how to key his biometrics into the lock, then helped him get settled. As she was leaving, she turned back with a slight smile. A word of advice, Marcus Chen. Don't try too hard to fit in. Your differences, properly applied, may be your greatest strength here. After she left, Marcus spent some time arranging his few belongings and familiarizing himself with the room's systems. Through the window, he could see one of Proxima's suns setting, painting the station in gorgeous shades of purple and gold. He thought about Tilara's words, about the dean's dismissive attitude, about the customs and prejudices he'd have to navigate. But he also thought about the opportunity he had to prove that humans could excel in this environment, to bridge the gap between species, to learn and grow in ways no human had before. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but Marcus Chen was ready to face them. He had prepared thoroughly, studied hard, and now he had at least one ally in this strange new world. As he watched the alien sunset, he smiled to himself. This was going to be interesting. Marcus quickly discovered that being the only human at Galactic University Proxima meant becoming something of a curiosity. His first week of classes was filled with sidelong glances, whispered conversations in various alien languages, most of which he could understand, thanks to his xenolinguistics training, and the occasional outright stare. Professor Marin's advanced xenolinguistics seminar proved particularly challenging. The elderly Nephilim had a traditional teaching style that emphasized rote memorization and strict adherence to established linguistic patterns. When Marcus suggested that human languages evolve through usage rather than academic decree, the professor's silver eyes had narrowed dangerously. Perhaps on your primitive world, human, Marin had said, but here we maintain proper standards. It was after one such frustrating class that Marcus found himself in the university's vast library, surrounded by holographic texts and data crystals. He was attempting to complete a particularly complex assignment on Zrilk's dialectic variations when he noticed a young Meridian student at a nearby table, clearly struggling with their own work. The Meridian's bioluminescent patterns were flickering in a way that Marcus recognized as distress. Without thinking, he approached their table. "Hey there," he said softly. "Having trouble with the assignment?" The Meridian looked up, their patterns shifting to surprise and mild embarrassment. "Is it that obvious?" "Only because I've been stuck on it myself." Marcus smiled. "Mind if I join you? Maybe we could figure it out together." The student's patterns brightened slightly. "Please, I'm Carell." As they worked together, Marcus discovered that Carell's difficulty stemmed not from lack of understanding, but from trying to force their naturally fluid thought patterns into the rigid framework demanded by Professor Marin. "See, the thing about language," Marcus explained. is that it's not just about rules and patterns. It's about communication, about connecting with others. What if we approached it from how your species naturally thinks? Using techniques he'd developed for his own studies, Marcus helped Carell map the Zrilix dialects to the flowing, color-based communication patterns of their own species. Soon, understanding dawned in Carell's ever-shifting features. That's brilliant," they exclaimed. "I've never thought of it that way before." "Everything all right over here?" a familiar voice asked. Marcus looked up to see Tilara standing nearby, her silver eyes curious. "Tilara." Carell's patterns pulsed with excitement. "Marcus just helped me understand Professor Marin's assignment in a whole new way." Tilara settled gracefully into a chair at their table. "Did he now? I'd be interested to hear this approach." As Marcus explained his methodology, he noticed Tilara's expression growing increasingly thoughtful. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You know," she said finally, "I have several other students who have been struggling with similar issues. Perhaps you might be willing to help them as well." That was how Marcus's informal study group began. Word spread quickly among the struggling students, particularly the non-traditional ones like Tilara, who found the conventional teaching methods challenging. Soon, Marcus was spending most of his free evenings in the library, surrounded by a diverse group of aliens, helping them bridge the gap between their natural ways of thinking and the university's expectations. Tilara often joined them, ostensibly to supervise, but Marcus caught her taking notes on his methods more than once. He also couldn't help noticing how her presence affected him. The grace of her movements, the wisdom in her eyes, the way her rare smiles seemed to light up the room. One evening, after the others had left, she lingered behind. "You're doing something remarkable here, Marcus Chen," she said softly. "These students, many of them were close to giving up. Your approach has given them hope." Marcus felt his cheeks warm at her praise. "I'm just helping them find their own way of understanding. Everyone learns differently." "Yes, they do." Tilara's expression turned serious. "But not everyone here appreciates alternative methods. Professor Marin and others have noticed the improvement in their students' work. They're asking questions. Are we doing something wrong?" Marcus asked, suddenly concerned. Tilara shook her head. "No, but you're challenging centuries of established teaching tradition. Some will see that as a threat." She paused, then added more quietly, "And some already see too much fraternization between species as inappropriate." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat at the way she said that last word. "Tilara." "I should go," she said quickly, rising from her seat. "My son will be wondering where I am." "But Marcus." She hesitated, then reached out to touch his hand briefly. "Be careful." As he watched her leave, Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions churning inside him. He was proud of the progress his study group was making, worried about the potential backlash, and increasingly aware of his growing feelings for Tilara. Feelings that crossed not only species boundaries but significant cultural taboos. But as he gathered his materials and prepared to leave the library, he couldn't help but smile. He had come to Proxima Station to learn, to bridge gaps between species, to prove that humans could excel in this environment. Maybe he was doing that in ways he hadn't expected, but he was making a difference. The next day's Advanced Xenolinguistics seminar brought a surprise. Professor Marin announced a major project. Students would be required to demonstrate mastery of 3 different alien languages through practical application. And since we have such an innovative approach to learning in our midst, Marin said, his silver eyes fixed pointedly on Marcus, perhaps our human student would like to be the first to present. Marcus met the professor's gaze steadily. "I look forward to it, Professor." As he left the classroom, Marcus's mind was already racing with ideas. He would show them all that human adaptability, combined with respect for alien cultures, could produce something extraordinary. And maybe, just maybe, he would prove that the barriers between species were not as insurmountable as some believed. The evening before his presentation for Professor Marin's class, Marcus found himself in one of Proxima Station's observation lounges, watching the dance of ships against the star-filled backdrop. His data tablet lay forgotten beside him, full of notes and practice recordings for tomorrow's demonstration. "You seem troubled," came Tilara's voice from behind him. He turned to see her approaching, her silver hair catching the starlight. "The students were asking about you when you missed tonight's study session." "Sorry about that," Marcus sighed. "I needed some time to think. Tomorrow's presentation, it feels like more than just a test. Like everything I'm trying to prove here is riding on it." Tilara settled into the seat beside him, closer than propriety might strictly allow. "Tell me your plan. I want to show them that understanding different species isn't just about memorizing rules and patterns. It's about empathy, about finding common ground." He turned to face her, his eyes bright with excitement. "I'm going to tell a story, the same story, in 3 different languages, but adapted to resonate with each species' cultural framework." "Ambitious," Tilara murmured. "And risky. Professor Marin expects strict adherence to traditional forms." "I know, but maybe it's time someone showed that there's another way." Marcus hesitated, then added softly, "The story, it's about breaking down barriers, about finding connection across differences that seem insurmountable." Tilara was quiet for a long moment, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight, like the barriers between a human student and a Nephilim mother. Marcus's heart raced. "Tilara, my son asked about you yesterday," she interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He wanted to know why the human teacher who helps everyone never comes to visit us anymore. I thought, after what you said about fraternization being inappropriate, I was warning you about the conservatives' views. I never said I shared them." She turned to face him fully. "My people's traditions are important to me, Marcus. But so is growth. Change. The very things you're teaching your students." Before Marcus could respond, his tablet chimed with an urgent message. It was Corel, their bioluminescent patterns flickering anxiously in a recorded hologram. "Marcus, you need to come to the library right away. Something's happened with the study group." He exchanged a quick glance with Tilara, and they hurried to the library together. They found Corel and several other students gathered around their usual tables, looking worried. Professor Marin stood before them, along with Dean Wheeler and 2 other faculty members. "Ah, here's the architect of this unauthorized teaching arrangement," Marin said coldly. "Mr. Chen, would you care to explain why you've been undermining our established curriculum?" Marcus straightened his spine, meeting the professor's gaze. "I haven't been undermining anything, Professor. I've been helping students understand the material in ways that work for them, by encouraging them to abandon proper academic methods, to reject centuries of proven teaching tradition." "No," Corel spoke up, their patterns pulsing with determination. "By helping us bridge the gap between your methods and our own ways of learning. My grades have improved significantly since." "Silence," Marin snapped. "This is not about grades. This is about maintaining standards, about preserving the integrity of our institution." "Is it?" Hilara's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Or is it about control? About forcing every student into the same rigid mold, regardless of their needs or abilities?" Dean Wheeler's eyes narrowed. "Tilara, you forget yourself. Your position here." "My position here is as a student, Dean Wheeler, one who has benefited greatly from Marcus Chen's teaching methods." She stepped forward, her bearing regal despite the implicit threat. "And I am not alone." One by one, other students began to speak up. A young Zrilx described how Marcus had helped them understand complex phonetic patterns by relating them to their species' natural clicking language. A Meridian explained how his color-based learning techniques had revolutionized their understanding of linguistic structure. As the testimonials continued, Marcus noticed a subtle shift in Dean Wheeler's expression. The elderly Nephilim's rigid disapproval began to show cracks of uncertainty. "This is all very touching," Professor Marin interrupted, But it doesn't change the fact that these methods are unorthodox, untested. Then test them, Marcus said firmly. Tomorrow, in my presentation, let me demonstrate not just mastery of the languages, but a new way of teaching them. Judge the results for yourself. A tense silence fell over the library. Finally, Dean Velor spoke. Very well, Mr. Chen. Tomorrow you will have your chance. But be warned, if you fail to meet our standards, this study group of yours will be disbanded, and your position here will be reconsidered. As the faculty members departed, the students clustered around Marcus, offering support and encouragement. But his attention was focused on Tilera, who stood slightly apart, her silver eyes filled with a mix of pride and concern. Later, as they walked back to the residential section together, Tilera touched his arm lightly. You've started something here, Marcus. Something bigger than just helping students pass their classes. I know, he replied softly. And I'm not backing down now. Too many people are counting on me. She smiled, a rare full smile that made his heart skip. Then you should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a defining moment for all of us. As he watched her walk away, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Tomorrow he would either change the way Galactic University approached teaching, or he would lose everything he had worked for. But with Tilera's support and the faith of his students behind him, he was ready to face whatever came. He spent the night refining his presentation, pouring all his understanding of human adaptability, alien cultures, and the universal desire for connection into every word. Tomorrow would indeed be a defining moment, not just for him, but for the future of human-alien relations at the university. The presentation hall was packed. Word had spread about the confrontation in the library, and it seemed every student and faculty member not actively in class had come to witness Marcus Chen's demonstration. He stood at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays, acutely aware of Professor Marin's stern gaze from the front row. Tilera sat near the back, her silver eyes offering silent support. Beside her was a young Nephilim who could only be her son, looking curious despite his obvious attempt to appear disinterested. The sight gave Marcus an extra surge of determination. Today, he began, his voice steady, I'll be demonstrating mastery of 3 alien languages, Cyrillic, Meridian, and High Nephilim. A murmur ran through the crowd at the ambitious selection. High Nephilim, in particular, was notorious for its complexity. But more than that, Marcus continued, I'll show how these languages reflect the souls of the species who speak them, and how understanding those connections can bridge the gaps between us. He activated the first holographic display, which showed a simple scene. 2 beings meeting under an alien sky. As he began to speak in Cyrillic, the clicking and whistling sounds perfectly modulated. The image transformed to show the scene from a Cyrillic perspective. Multiple visual planes overlapping, representing their 4-eyed vision. The story he told was simple but powerful. 2 different species learning to communicate despite vast differences in perception and thought. As he shifted to Meridian, the holographic scene changed again, becoming a symphony of colors and patterns that matched the flowing tones of the bioluminescent language. Finally, he began the High Nephilim portion. The ancient, formal language rolled off his tongue with practiced precision, but he infused it with something more, emotional resonance that technically shouldn't have been possible in such a structured tongue. The holographic display showed the same story from a Nephilim perspective, emphasizing the beauty of tradition while embracing the possibility of change. As he finished, silence fell over the hall. Marcus held his breath, waiting for the response. Professor Marin rose slowly from his seat, his expression unreadable. Mr. Chen, he began, your command of the technical aspects of each language is. He paused, seeming to struggle with the admission. Impressive. However, your unorthodox presentation was brilliant, interrupted a new voice. The crowd parted to reveal Ambassador Kix, the same Cyrillic professor Marcus had met on his first day at the station. I came to observe after hearing about your innovative teaching methods, Mr. Chen. I must say, I've never seen our language presented with such cultural understanding." Before Marin could respond, a commotion arose near the back of the hall. A group of students burst in, led by Corell, their patterns flickering with urgent distress. "Dean Wheeler," Corell called out, "we've discovered something you need to see." They projected a hologram showing official university records. "These are grade statistics from the past decade. Look at the failure rates among non-traditional and cross-species students. And now look at the improvement in those same students since Marcus started his study group." The data was undeniable. Success rates had improved dramatically, particularly among species traditionally considered unsuited for advanced linguistic studies. "This proves nothing," Marin protested. "Correlation does not imply. It proves everything." Tulara's voice rang out as she stood. "It proves that different species learn differently, and that forcing everyone to conform to a single teaching method serves no one." She walked forward to stand beside Marcus. "My own grades have improved significantly since adopting these techniques, as have those of every student in the study group." Dean Wheeler studied the data carefully, then turned to Ambassador Kix. "You find merit in these methods?" "More than merit," the ambassador replied. "I see the future of interspecies education, the ability to adapt teaching styles to different species' needs while maintaining academic rigor. This could revolutionize how we approach cultural exchange." A low murmur of excitement spread through the hall. Marcus felt Tulara's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. From the back of the room, her son watched with widening eyes. Dean Wheeler raised a hand for silence. "Professor Marin, would you agree that Mr. Chen has demonstrated mastery of the required languages?" Marin's expression was sour, but he nodded stiffly. "The technical requirements were met, yes." "Then I believe we have an opportunity here." The dean turned to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, how would you feel about formalizing your teaching methods? Perhaps as part of a new pilot program for cross-species education?" Marcus blinked in surprise. I would be honored, Dean Wheeler. But I couldn't take credit alone. Every student in the study group has contributed to developing these techniques. Then they should be part of the program as well." The dean's silver eyes twinkled with something that might have been amusement. "Particularly our most experienced student, Tilara, who seems to have quite a vested interest in your success." Tilara's hand tightened on Marcus's, but she held her head high. "I believe in what Marcus is doing here, both as a student and as someone who has seen the need for change in our educational system." "As do I," said Ambassador Kix. "In fact, I would be very interested in discussing the possibility of expanding this program to other institutions." As the crowd erupted in excited discussion, Marcus turned to Tilara. Her silver eyes were bright with emotion. "We did it," he whispered. "You did it," she corrected softly. "You showed them a new way forward." She glanced back at her son, who was now making his way toward them. "You showed all of us." The young Nephilim stopped in front of them, studying Marcus with intense curiosity. "Mom says you're changing how things are done here," he said, "making it easier for different species to understand each other." Marcus nodded, suddenly nervous. "That's the goal." The boy seemed to consider this carefully. "Good," he said finally. "Maybe you can help me with my xenobiology homework sometime." Tilara's surprise laugh was like music. "I think that can be arranged," she said, her eyes meeting Marcus's with unmistakable warmth. As the hall gradually emptied, Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers and curious faculty members eager to learn more about his methods. But his attention kept drifting to Tilara and her son, standing together nearby, representing everything he had come to love about his life on Proxima Station. He had arrived hoping to prove that humans could excel in this environment. Instead, he had shown that excellence could take many forms, and that the barriers between species were often just opportunities for growth in disguise. 6 months after his landmark presentation, Marcus stood in the newly designated Cross-Species Education Center, watching students of various species working together in small groups. The space had been transformed from a traditional lecture hall into an interactive learning environment, with holographic displays, sensory adaptation zones, and flexible seating arrangements to accommodate different physiologies. Quite a change from when you first arrived, isn't it? Tilara's voice came from behind him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, no longer concerned about who might see their display of affection. Sometimes I can hardly believe it, Marcus admitted, leaning back into her embrace. Remember how scandalized everyone was when we first started dating publicly? Tilara chuckled, the sound sending pleasant vibrations through his chest. The horror of a respected Nephilim mother involved with a young human troublemaker. It was quite the scandal. And now look at us. Marcus gestured to the bustling center, co-directors of the most innovative education program in the sector. The pilot program had exceeded all expectations. Students from across the galaxy were applying to study at Proxima Station, drawn by the promise of education tailored to their species' unique needs and learning styles. Even Professor Marin had grudgingly admitted that the results were impressive, though he still insisted on maintaining certain traditional standards in his own classes. "Dad," a voice called out. Marcus turned to see Hilara's son, Kex, hurrying toward them. The young Nephilim had taken to calling him Dad shortly after Marcus and Tilara's bonding ceremony, and the word still filled him with warmth every time he heard it. "What's up, kiddo?" Marcus asked, noting the excitement in Kex's silver eyes. "Ambassador Kix is here with the delegation from the Galactic Education Council. They want to see your presentation about expanding the program." Marcus exchanged a glance with Tilara. This was the moment they'd been working toward. The chance to implement their methods across multiple institutions throughout the galaxy. "Ready to change the universe, love?" he asked. Tilara's smile was radiant. "With you. Always." They made their way to the conference room, where Ambassador Kix waited with a diverse group of education officials. The Zrilk's professor's 4 eyes brightened upon seeing them. "Ah, the famous couple." Kix clicked cheerfully. "We've been hearing remarkable things about your program." As Marcus began their presentation, he couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. The holographic displays showed statistical improvements in student performance, testimonials from graduates who had gone on to successful careers in various fields, and proposals for implementing similar programs at other institutions. The key, Tilara explained to the council, is understanding that diversity isn't just about accepting different species. It's about embracing different ways of thinking, learning, and connecting. "And this applies beyond just education," Marcus added. "By learning to adapt our methods of communication and understanding, we open doors to deeper cooperation in all areas of galactic society." The council members murmured appreciatively, their various appendages and sensory organs showing clear signs of approval. Even the most conservative members seemed impressed by the data. After the presentation, as they celebrated with their family and colleagues in the observation lounge, Marcus found himself once again staring out at the stars. Kirill, now a teaching assistant in the program, joined him. "Credit for your thoughts?" they asked, their patterns shifting in gentle curiosity. "Just thinking about that first day in the library," Marcus replied. "When you were struggling with that assignment, did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Kirill's patterns rippled with amusement. "Honestly, no. But that's the beauty of your human adaptability, isn't it? You see possibilities where others see only obstacles." "We all do," Marcus corrected, watching as Tilara approached with Kex. "We just needed someone to show us how." Tilara slipped her hand into his as they gazed out at the endless expanse of space. "Speaking of showing us things," she said softly, "I have something to tell you." Marcus turned to her, noting an unusual shimmer in her silver eyes. "The medical tests came back," she continued. "It's possible. Difficult, but possible. We're going to have a baby." Marcus's heart seemed to stop for a moment before racing forward with joy. A human Nephilim child. Something that had been considered impossible until recent breakthroughs in genetic medicine. "Really?" Kex exclaimed. I'm going to be a big brother." Tilara nodded, her eyes glistening. "The doctors say it will take careful monitoring, but they're optimistic." Marcus pulled his family close, overwhelmed with emotion. This was more than he had ever dreamed possible when he first arrived at Proxima Station. A successful career, a loving family, and a chance to make real change in the galaxy. "I love you," he whispered to Tilara. "All of you." As news of their groundbreaking pregnancy spread through the station, Marcus realized they were creating yet another first, not just in education or cross-species relationships, but in the very future of human-alien integration. Looking around at his students, his colleagues, his family, Marcus Chen knew that he had found something far greater than academic success or professional recognition. He had found a way to bridge the gaps between species, to show that love and understanding could transcend any barrier. And as Proxima's twin suns sat outside the station's crystalline walls, casting the observation lounge in shades of gold and purple, Marcus held his family close and smiled. This wasn't just a happy ending, it was a beautiful beginning. The barriers between species were falling, one connection at a time, and the future was brighter than any star in the galaxy.